Every year on January 1st, thousands upon thousands of people make New Year's resolutions. And every year, thousands upon thousands of people fail to keep them. You know, some of them fail the first day. They wake up and then they just fail. Other people, you know, they push on, they're skipping the break room so they don't see the pastries, they're sticking their credit cards in the back of the freezer. But eventually, they all just kind of collapse under the pressure and they fail, and they never get back up again. Now, was it the fact that they failed the reason they just couldn't get back up again? No, it's because they didn't think they could try again. They thought, oh, it's over, it's done with, great, I screwed up. Better luck next year. When your relationship with God is, you know, your path you're walking on, and you step off the path, if you think, oh, crap, I just screwed up, I cannot get back on there, you're never going to get back up, you're never going to accomplish all the things that God has for you. What you need to remember is that God is always there waiting for you to come back. My main focus right here that I want you all to remember is don't give up hope when you've fallen from God's will. He can use absolutely everything for his purpose. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, "But he said to me, my grace is all you need. My power is strongest when you are weak, and I am very happy to brag about the fact that I am weak because Christ's power can rest on me." When I was in high school, God called me to be a youth minister and to preach, and I kind of looked at God and was like, ha, nice try, I don't think so. And I, you know, ran down to Missouri and I studied music, and I just was going with what I wanted to do because it looked like fun. And I wanted to justify myself because I was still serving God, and I was like, I'll join a ministry team. That's ministry. Traveled all over, and over fall break we went to Tennessee, a really tiny town, you know, just west of Nashville. And we ministered there for a weekend, and the very last Sunday, this girl named Caitlin came up to me, and she said, "You have impacted my life so much. I have been running from God and doing absolutely everything not to do what he wants me to do. But I have this just desire in me to turn back and serve him, and I really feel being called into ministry." It was such a smack in the face. I was like, oh, thanks, God. But the thing is, he was still using me even though I was walking away from him. He uses you when you walk away to affect all the people around you no matter what's going on. My first point is that when you run from God's call, he can still use you to change the lives of every single person you interact with. In Jonah, we hear the story of this guy that just ran from God. God came up to Jonah and said, hey, there's this town in Nineveh and they're evil and I want you to go talk to them. And Jonah looked at God and was like, I don't think so. So he hopped on a boat and headed off to Tarshish. And God was like, all right, have this storm. You know, it's going to affect you lovely. You're going to love it. And all of the sailors on the boat are just in absolute distress. They're calling out to their gods. They're throwing all their cargo overboard, which is their livelihood. And eventually they get to the point where they're just casting lots and trying to figure out who on earth is causing this storm. And they land on Jonah. And they show up to Jonah and they're like, dude, what did you do? Who are you? Where are you from? What is your God? And Jonah's like, I'm a Hebrew, and my God is the Lord. He is the God. I'm kind of running away from him right now. Yeah. And, you know, they ask him, what can we do to solve the storm? And he goes, well, you can throw me overboard. And they're really hesitant at this. You know, they're going to kill a guy to throw him overboard. And eventually, you know, they find out they have no other options, and so they pick him up, toss him over, calm stop. Like, the storm's completely calm. Absolutely no problem. And they bow down. Jonah 1:16 says the sailors were awestruck by God's great power, and they offered him sacrifices and vowed to serve him only. Don't give up hope when you've fallen away from God, because he can use absolutely everything for his purpose. Another story I'm going to tell you is found in Genesis. It's actually chapters 37 through like 50. So I'm going to shorten it a little bit. Joseph was this guy who was about 17 years old and was his dad's favorite. Every parent has a favorite. For my family, it's my sister. She can do no wrong. Oh my goodness. She was a youth pastor. She, you know, is a missionary to the Dominican Republic, and they just give her money. And I'm like, oh, so not fair. And there are times in my life when I hate my sister. And I'm just like, can't you just screw up so that they like me again? Joseph's brothers were like that. And one day, Jacob, Joseph's dad, sent Joseph to go find his brothers and, you know, see how they were doing. And Joseph's brothers saw him coming, and they're like, oh, here comes that dreamer who had all those dreams about how we're going to bow down to him someday. Let's kill him. one of Joseph's brother, Reuben, stepped up and said, don't kill him, just throw him into this little cistern here and we'll take care of him later. And so, they picked Jonah up, tossed him in the cistern, and was like, yes, no more Jonah. And then, went off to have dinner. And then they saw this caravan of, Midianites going across, and they're like, hey, if we kill Jonah, or Joseph, it's kind of our fault. But if we sell him, we didn't do anything to him, we just sold him. And, hey, we get a little extra cash. So they picked him out of the cistern, sold him off into slavery, and then convinced their dad that he had died. And then we kind of know the story of how Jonah, got up in the ranks and then kind of got thrown into jail and then came up in the ranks again. And basically, he became second in command of Egypt. And there's this huge famine going around in all the surrounding nations. And Jacob sends his sons, go to Egypt, get us some food. We're dying here. And so Joseph sees his brothers coming along and asking for food. And he goes, those are my brothers. And he kind of toys with them for 3 or 4 chapters. But eventually he gets to the point where he makes himself known to his brothers, and they're just, terrified. In Genesis 50:20, we say, you intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so that I could save the lives of many people. God took something that Joseph's brothers really intended just to harm him and just get rid of him for the rest of life. And God turned it so that Joseph actually ended up not only saving his brothers, but saving so many nations around him because he used his wisdom. My second point is that when you plan something for evil, God can turn it around for good. He doesn't really care what your intentions are. He'll find a way. There's this girl named Heather. When I was a freshman, the summer before my freshman year, I went on this missions trip with my church, and Heather came along with us. She's not a member of our church, but her cousin went to our church, so she just kind of came with us. I got to know her a little bit and found out that, okay, she's a Christian. She had no intention on serving God. She was just kind of there for the fun. About 2 months after the trip, my youth pastor stepped up in front of all of us and said, hey, you all need to pray for Heather. She's in a coma. She tried to hang herself. And I just kind of sat back in shock because I had just spent a week with her and had no idea. And for years, I hadn't heard anything about what happened to Heather. And last summer, I was on worship team, and I looked out into the congregation, and I saw this girl, and I was like, that looks a lot like Heather. And she actually came up and talked to me because she saw that I had this huge confused face, and she's like, I think you know me, but I don't know you. Turns out she'd woken up from the coma. She had very little memory of, the months preceding and the months following her suicide attempt. And she had very little ability to make up memories. She still has no idea who I am, which is actually kind of entertaining to me. But in the year that she has been at our church, she has gotten highly involved in our young adult ministry. She tells her testimony regularly about how God really saved her life. And she lives for God every day. She strives to please him. She strives to do everything she possibly can to make him happy. And I just see that huge difference from this girl who was just a Christian and who just kind of wanted to live life to this girl who was doing absolutely everything. She might not know what she did last week, but she's going to do more for God. And she is just changing lives constantly for her. And I, again, want to point out that even when you've fallen from God's will, he can use everything for his purpose. He can use, your brother selling you into slavery, and he can use you trying to kill yourself. He can use, just a simple mistake that you've made on your daily life to really turn back to him. Now, last we heard from Jonah, he was tossed into the ocean or sea. He didn't die, surprisingly. God sent a big fish to him, and Jonah 2:10 through 3:2 says, the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah out into dry land. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the city of Nineveh and give them the message I gave you. Jonah got swallowed by the fish. He was in there for 3 days, and in chapter 2, you just read this cry that Jonah sends out, and it's kind of like, I could have died, but you saved me in not necessarily the greatest way. Would have been nice not to be inside a fish, but still, you saved me. And God was like, all right, let's try this again. Spit him out, and God started right where he had left off.